Good evening and welcome to 1010, your top 10 news in 10 minutes. I'm Andy Hong. If I sound a little nasally or have to clear my throat time to time, it's because I've been a little under the weather as of late. It's gotten better, so by next week, it'll be back to being old me with my beautiful voice. Okay, that sounded much worse than I expected it to be, so let's just get on with the news. 14-year-old Ahmed Mohamed, a science-loving student from Irving, Texas, went viral over the internet when the boy was arrested for bringing a homemade clock to school in order to impress his teacher. Unfortunately, his teachers believed that the clock resembled a bomb and contacted authorities. Neither the police nor the school has apologized, and Mohammed is considering transferring schools, and I'll personally advise him to get out of there as soon as possible. How paranoid does one have to be to see a few circuit boards in a suitcase and immediately believe it's a threat to his or her safety? And even if it did look suspicious to some, nobody questioned for once if it actually was a bomb? Fortunately, not everybody is as deluded as the idiots who punished Mohammed for his intellect. He received invitations from Facebook, Google, and Twitter for science fairs and internships, and even from President Obama. Mohammed is due to visit the White House next month. And now, speaking of the White House, for our 2016 election coverage, we'll go to correspondent Lauren Song for the latest. Lauren?
Yes, I'm Lauren Song with the election news for the week. Many are questioning if that incident would have happened had Mohammed not been a Muslim boy. It's pretty difficult to find cases of intolerance and hate against different races and ethnicities here in the Irvine bubble, but just leave it to Donald Trump supporters to show us the worst of what we can be. A man at Trump's New Hampshire campaign stood up to spit out a disgusting accusation against Muslims and our president. He called Muslims a problem in this country and called President Obama a Muslim who's not even an American citizen, and then finished off with the grand finale of, "We have training camps growing where they want to kill us." That's my question. When can we get rid of it? Senator John McCain got a similarly hateful question against then-Senator Barack Obama in a rally to which McCain immediately shot down the question and defended Obama as a family man and good citizen. Not only did Trump not defend the president against slanderous remarks, but also wrote on social media that he has no moral obligation to defend Obama. Many Democratic and Republican candidates have rushed in to slam Trump for his behavior, hopefully for the sake of keeping the presidential race civilized and not for trash-talking Donald Trump. Back to you, Andy.
Thank you, Lauren. Well, haters gonna hate. President Obama continued on his merry way with his agenda. Yesterday, he nominated Eric Fanning as the Secretary of the Army, the first openly gay man to become nominated for the job. He is yet to be approved, of course. That is up to the U.S. Senate. Obama has put in a lot of effort to integrate the LGBT community into the military, especially with the ending of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy in 2010. However, it should be known that Fanning's appointment isn't just a political move to further the integration. Fanning has served as Secretary of Defense for Ash Carter's Chief of Staff, Secretary of Defense Ash Carter's Chief of Staff, the Undersecretary of the Air Force, and the Deputy Undersecretary of the Navy. Let's hope that the Senate and the rest of the public judges Fanning based on his military record and his service to the country. If Fanning does indeed become Secretary of the Army, he and his colleagues will have their work cut out for them, especially on Syria. Defense Secretary Carter and Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu held talks on Friday regarding the Syrian civil war as a response to increasing Russian military presence there. In any case, the Syrian civilians are the only ones losing out in this war. More than 4 million Syrian refugees have left the country due to the wars, and so far the world's attention has been turned to their stories in Turkey, Greece, Italy, Jordan, Lebanon, and various other European nations. It seems like we've been forgetting about the immigration issue back home. Authorities in San Antonio and Laredo suspect a human smuggling operation as immigration and customs enforcement officials confirmed that dozens of immigrants have been found in the back of a semi-truck. Fortunately, ICE has reported that none are dead, but have made no further announcement on the conditions of the migrants. Homeland Security is conducting further investigations. Janet Yellen's Federal Reserve might have opened a can of worms on Thursday when it decided not to raise interest rates, citing concerns over a weakening global economy. Stocks around the world and in Wall Street dropped by several percent. It's an interesting dynamic. When the Feds want to raise rates because things look better around the world, some people react badly because, well, the interest rates increase. On the other hand, when they opt not to raise the rates, another group takes it badly because that indirectly means that the economy is doing subpar. And as many of you might have been following if you watch BBC or have any Commonwealth friends, the 2015 England Rugby World Cup has been going on. Congratulations to Team Japan for the stunning clutch victory over South Africa 32-34 against two-time champions. BBC called it arguably the biggest upset in rugby union history, but there is even a bigger upset back in East Asia as Japan's upper chamber of parliament passed measures to remove limits on overseas deployment of military force. After Imperial Japan was defeated in World War II, the new pacifist constitution's Article 9 stated that Japanese people forever renounce war as a sovereign right of the nation and the threat or use of force as means of settling international disputes. But now the conservative government has provided for the military to conduct limited military actions abroad. Japan's neighbors, Korea and China, are the ones most concerned by the move. They see it as the beginning of the end of Japan's pacifism, which might make sense to many of you. To quote many comments on the articles, why don't people just let them? World War II is all past and done. Why does Korea and China have to be so whiny about this? Why should the current generation continue to take responsibility for this? Now, this is going to be divisive, but let a Korean explain it to you. It's true that many Japanese people displayed compassion and sincerity through their apologies for their nation's war crimes. But the reason why so many find it so difficult to accept the Japanese government's apologies is that every time a righteous voice appears and renounces Japan's imperialist past, there is always an equal, sometimes more powerful voice that utterly refutes it. As a result, it is natural that many would be unhappy to see military projection as a foreign policy option of a nation that isn't completely reconciled with its militaristic past. And as for the latter, well, history is what makes us what we are today. It's always the current generation's responsibility to uphold the lessons and make amends for the actions of our forefathers. Hopefully one day we'll find closure on the issue and put the past to rest. Then I'm sure that many of us will be proud to call Japan our unshakable allies and friends. Now, there were a lot of things that went unsaid, but I already broke my plan to keep things short for the sake of my poor throat. So I'll stop there. Move on to the rest of the news. As shown in this National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration graphic, central Chile was struck by a powerful 8.3 earthquake, the strongest quake so far this year. The coastal town of Coquimbo experienced a tsunami with waves up to nearly 15 meters and 5 meters, 15 feet. And nations around the Pacific were hit with varying degrees of tsunami waves as far away as Canada and Japan. With only 11 deaths reported, there was a surprisingly low death toll considering the brute strength of the monster quake, but the property damage is still extensive throughout much of the regions affected. Pope Francis arrived at Cuba for his first visit to the island nation. President Raul Castro warmly greeted him in Havana as the pontiff is hailed as a key figure in improving U.S.-Cuban relations as of late. The entire city was renovated ahead of the visit, and it is predicted that there will be around 1,000 Cuban and foreign journalists arriving in Cuba, as well as Argentinian President Cristina Fernandez Kirchner. This trip will also connect to Francis's first trip to the United States later this month as well. 250 pieces of ancient Egyptian artifacts that remained underwater for over 1,000 years were displayed in Paris recently. The city of Thonis Heracleion and Canopus went underwater in the 8th century due to natural disasters and were only discovered 15 years ago by archaeologist Frank Godillo. Due to the enormous search parameters, only 2% has been uncovered, and we're all excited for new discoveries to surface soon. Finally, speaking of sickness, flu season is almost here. The Centers for Disease Control announced that this year's flu vaccine will definitely be more effective than the one last year. That is, if the strain doesn't mutate last minute like it did last year. Fortunately, this vaccine is expected to be 50 to 60% effective compared to last year's 13%. CDC recommends that you get vaccinated quickly for your safety and the safety of others, as the season is expected to begin in October and last until around May. And that was the 1010 News of the Week. I'm Andy Hong. Next week is the last week of summer, though it doesn't seem like it here in Irvine. Hopefully it'll get cooler, but knowing this place, I know it won't. Anyways, thanks for watching, and we'll be back next week with more of your top 10 news in 10 minutes. Stay educated.